better than the way that I felt for 36 hours. It's nice to turn the lava off in my stomach, but the chip is long gone. We are ticking very close to officially live on YouTube. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the NBA DFS Strategy Show, presented by both Awesomeo.com and SuperDraft. SuperDraft. It's never not fun for me to do that. 7-game slate coming up on this lovely Tuesday. Myself and Adam are going to break this bad boy down. Anything good for you last night?
No.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Lots of Giannis. Womp womp. What's really crazy is you look at that and it's like, man, Giannis was such a bust. Dude had like 1.65 fantasy points per minute on FanDuel. Just happened to not be able to play a lot of those minutes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with him. I mean, obviously, we normally talk about it in the context of blowouts, but in general, he does not have bad games
No.
if he plays his full minutes. Obviously, there's a couple exceptions in there, but it's really just pretty ridiculous how productive he is for every minute he's on the floor on a very consistent basis.
It's bonkers. Like I said, he was 1.65, I believe, on FanDuel,
which is bad for him.
Right. Here's the craziest part of all of that. That is higher than anybody's rate that actually plays over the last 30 days on FanDuel.
Right. Yeah.
James Harden is second right now at 1.58 fantasy points per minute on FanDuel over the last 30 days. Giannis beat that, and everybody is just like, man, that sucked.
Right.
Now, obviously, it's because of minutes. I get it. But, like, to be able to play in a very competent way like every other star and still just be looked at as a letdown.
Yeah, like I was kind of so obviously the Harden news came after, or the Westbrook news, I should say, came out after Giannis's game had locked. And if you had a lot of Giannis, you could. There were some spots where you could swap, but there were a lot of lineups, at least for me, where I didn't have the money left to, get the Harden. And I saw, some people on Twitter kind of just joking about how Harden wasn't really as popular as he should have been in DraftKings Cash. And I'm just looking at it like, you didn't play Giannis against the Wizards in cash? Well, congratulations, but what are you doing?
Giannis was at 2.02 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days heading into that game. Like, yeah, it's just, what kind of matchup were you looking for?
Right. No, I think it was Meansy from Roto Grinders a few days ago or a couple weeks ago when Westbrook was out. It was a slate where Westbrook was out and Giannis was also playing. And he just tweeted out the basic stats that, like, Harden's per minute numbers, everyone obviously understands how good Harden is when Westbrook's out. They're still not as good as Giannis's just day-to-day production.
He's like breaking fantasy, but the Bucks are so good that it's hard to notice.
Right. Except the one thing is that lately they've been more aggressive with his minutes too. Yeah. So I think that they're actually, obviously it's not a secret that Giannis is a great play every time he's on the slate. Right. But I do think that it's kind of going overlooked that they are running him more. And I think that at least for a little bit going forward, there is going to be a window where Giannis is really getting on their own.
Yeah, like, if he's like, I mean, here it is right here. If you think that he can play at a 2 fantasy point per minute rate and he plays 36 minutes, that's 72 fantasy points. That's like the median outcome.
Right. And when I say that he's going to be under-owned, again, it's, he was 35% owned yesterday. Yes, that's a pretty high number. But just think about it. Like, Russell Westbrook gets ruled out after lock and James Harden ends up 55% owned. On slates where Westbrook's out ahead of time, James Harden is like 80% owned every single time. And yes, I understand he plays 38, 39 minutes. Giannis is going to play like 32, 33, even if it's competitive usually. But the way people flock to Harden in that situation, who is still a inferior performer to Giannis on average, is, I think that Giannis is just he's on their own every single time he's on a slate pretty much.
It really is true. It's baffling to see. I'm excited to go right back to him again today too. But what's really important is going to SuperDraft. Go to superdraft.io, use the promo code Awesomeo, get yourself $20 in super cash on your first $100 deposit. You do not have to worry about salaries. Everybody gets a multiplier. They've got the late lock today, so it's a 6-game slate on SuperDraft, starting at 7:30 with that Raptors-Bucks game, which is a fantastic basketball game. Really excited to watch a little bit of that bad boy. Really enjoying the mechanics of SuperDraft right now. They've got, what are they running tonight? I want to make sure I get the amounts correct. I want to say that it was 15 guaranteed. No, 22.5 guaranteed. 4,500 to first. That's their jump shot tournament. That's their flagship contest each day. $12 to get in. 2,100 entries. Highly recommend you check that out. Possible you see, reduced rake, which is always going to be a benefit. That should be the first thing you're looking for if you're playing with a limited bankroll. So go check that out. Go to superdraft.io, use that promo code Awesomeo. And then follow that up by going to awesomeo.com/join. Use the promo code NBA Strategy. Get yourself 50% off your first week of Awesomeo Plus. We're running a gambit on all of the content we've got. NBA right now, NHL, PGA, MLB is coming up fast. What am I missing? MMA, NASCAR, tennis. We're checking off all those boxes. XFL. Come check out what we've got to offer. Use that promo code NBA Strategy. Get yourself that 50% off. No lineup study to look at right now, so it's time for us to just dive right in. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Indiana Pacers. Charlotte Hornets repping the LJ. And the 99 implied total. They are 10.5 point underdogs at home and the only team under 100, so that is pretty brutal. We'll start on the Pacers side. No Jeremy Lamb, who has like an exploded leg, some sort of torn ligament, kneecap, something break. I don't know. It doesn't seem good, but he's for sure out.
ACL, right?
Was it ACL?
And some other stuff. It was ACL and some other stuff, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if
knocked
it was
down
ACL
both free throws afterwards, though.
Like a boss. Meanwhile, I would be getting taken out on a stretcher trying to give the thumbs up, like, at least I'm alive.
Right. One of my friends has torn his ACL twice, and he actually tweeted in reply to, because Wob tweeted out the video of him making the free throws. He was just like, I tore my ACL and had to have someone else drive me home because I couldn't drive my car, like much less go shoot free throws.
I have a similar story to that. It's not me. Two of my best friends, one of which blew out their ACL playing a summer league basketball game. Other friend had to drive back. Other friend did not have a driver's license at that time, and not because it was suspended, because he had never gotten a driver's license to that point. So like was not qualified to be driving an automobile. Not great. It's also not the guy that tore his ACL, but the guy that was the driver that had no driver's license. It's his birthday today, so shout out to that. He made it, obviously. It's not an anniversary. It's a full birthday.
It's his birthday today. He's been gone for 15 years.
Yeah, he died that day. He would appreciate that joke too. Does Victor Oladipo play today?
I think you'd have to ask Victor Oladipo, but I mean, I'm gonna project him in until he's not.
Yeah, I gave him 28 minutes. It's not so bad on DraftKings where he's 6,300. You could just not care whether he plays or not for the most part. 4,800 on FanDuel. They don't seem to care.
Yeah,
he's 22.
They're very much into his recent performances.
Yeah, they apparently think that he really is a 0.68 fantasy point per minute guy. Sabonis at 20% on FanDuel, Brogdon at 28, Oladipo at 22, Warren and Turner 10 and 13 respectively. They're getting a lot of love on FanDuel. DraftKings not so much. Only guy in double digits, 21% owned, Miles Turner at 5K. Just talk to me in general. What do you like for the Pacers here?
I hate talking about teams that are playing Charlotte because on one hand, it's a good matchup, especially for guys like Turner and Sabonis. They're going to get a lot of minutes at the 5. On the other hand, Charlotte just plays so slow. Like, it is pretty incredible how much slower than even all of the other slow teams the Hornets play. And it obviously has a negative impact. So it kind of just, it normally just ends up making guys secondary options for me because you obviously have a really high ceiling on someone like Sabonis or on Miles Turner against a Charlotte team that is really bad defensively, especially in the front court. But there's just limited possessions, and you're not talking about Indiana being a fast team either. So, I think 5K Turner is certainly reasonable, expecting around 28, 30 minutes. I think that 9K for Sabonis is a little more expensive than I would like to pay just because there's going to be other options on the slate in that price range that I think look a little bit better, but, still obviously love the spot for him. And then the same goes for guys like Oladipo and Brogdon and to a lesser extent Warren because he is priced up a little bit, but, they're in good matchups. This team is going to get points. against a weak Charlotte defense. It's just that the lack of possessions is really an issue.
They're so slow. I just looked at my pace metric. So I have them at 95. Orlando is the second slowest team. The Hornets are 1.7 possessions behind the second worst team. That is really hard to do. They are 8.7 possessions per game slower than the Bucks, who are first. Wild.
I have NBA.com's pace numbers up since January 1st. So you're talking about 20 to 25 games for every team. The Hornets are 2.62 possessions slower than the 29th ranked Pistons.
Craziness. So crazy. So I'm sort of with you in that it's going to be hard to get to anything really from Indiana. Do you have any interest in this relatively chalky Miles Turner to start out the day?
How many possessions did you say slower than the Bucks? You had
8.7.
Since January 1st, NBA.com has them at 12.
Unbelievable.
So I mean, as far as Turner goes, I mean, you obviously run into the same issue as always with his potential minutes, but Lamb being out could have a positive impact because you obviously have mid-20s minutes disappearing there. If Oladipo's out, it has an even bigger impact.
Yeah.
Obviously not directly on Turner, but the more wing minutes that there are available that need to be soaked up, the more that TJ Warren is playing the 3, the more that Domantas Sabonis is playing the 4, which ends up having a trickle-down effect to the more that Miles Turner is on the floor. So those guys being out, I think, does help to solidify Turner's minutes, does mean you can project him a little bit higher than normal. And he is the guy that looks the best to me at only 5K from this Indiana squad.
Okay. How do you feel about these guys? We have to talk about it a little bit on FanDuel. It's just a tale of two sites. Sabonis, $700 cheaper. Malcolm Brogdon, $1,000 cheaper. TJ Warren is relatively reasonable on both. Oladipo, obviously, $4,800. What do we do with these guys with such different prices in what we've already described as a slow spot?
I think that the pricing on FanDuel makes it so the pace is less of a concern because you're just the price essentially accounts for that. On one hand, obviously, there's the caveat that players are generally underpriced across the board on FanDuel. So there's still going to be a lot of good options in these price ranges. Yeah. But, talking about Oladipo at 4,800, there are still concerns about his performance. I don't expect him to produce at the same rate right now that he was last year. But I also expect him to be better than he has been so far. And if you're going to get somewhere around 28 to 30 minutes from him, the pace isn't great, but the price is just too cheap. Same goes for Sabonis. He's, I think, a marginal play on DraftKings at his salary, but you're getting an even cheaper price point on FanDuel in a spot where he should just go nuts. Same goes for Brogdon. I think Turner's the only one who becomes less appealing on FanDuel. And it's because, for one, he's actually more expensive. And for two, he's a center. So you're locking up that, one center spot, whereas on DraftKings, you have two.
Absolutely. We're on the same page there. I'm playing Oladipo on FanDuel if he is in. I'd like to get to a little bit more Sabonis, but I have him as my 8th ranked power forward right now. The pace is really impacting this game. So I understand why Sabonis, Brogdon, Warren, Oladipo are getting love. I don't think that I'm going to get to nearly as much as the public implies.
And so I'm on the same page with you there. It goes back to, the pricing is really, really good on FanDuel, but if I just look at power forward pricing, you're still getting, you have Daniel Tice and Jason Tatum, for example, both at power forward. Tatum only a little bit more expensive, still playing without Kemba. You have, Eric Pascal's cheap. You have Zion, who's cheap. There's just still a lot of mispriced power forwards to where it's all relative.
Let's move over to the Charlotte side. This should be relatively easy. Terry Rozier, double digits in ownership. Only guy on both sites to get that. Malik Monk is 13% owned on DK. Devontae Graham is 10% owned on FanDuel. I'm okay with getting to a little bit of Terry Rozier on either site. I understand why Malik Monk is getting a little bit of love on DK. Those are really the only two things that I'm interested in. But for the most part, I'd rather just not have Charlotte.
Yeah, and I mean, I would throw a $6,700 Devontae Graham into the same category. Like, I prefer Rozier at $5,600 to Graham at $6,700 because I think that they're very similar producers and they play similar minutes. But basically, they're cheap enough that there's some upside there. But at the same time, they're a really slow team. Indiana's not a bad defensive team, and they're not fast either. You're talking about a sub 100 team total right now for Charlotte on a slate where the next lowest team is at 105, or sorry, 102, then 105. And, more than half the slate is in double digits or above 110. So, yeah, it's a good price point on, like on Rozier, for example, at 5,600, but I'm still not excited about it.
No. Like if he's 13% owned on DraftKings, I think that feels about right. And
right, like if I crunch, my 150 lineups and I go in, normally I'm short on time, so I don't really check it before lock, and then I go in after lock and see how badly I messed up. And I assume that I would probably get in like the 10 to 15% range on Rozier. That's kind of where it looks right now, like I would expect to be. If I were a little bit higher or a little bit lower, I wouldn't be too upset because it's not a price point that I expect to kill me, and but it's also not a matchup where I expect to get burned by not having tons of Terry Rozier.
This is just not the spot. Indiana, solid defensively. I mean, Hornets 99 implied total. We're going to find better spots today. For example, the Toronto Raptors hosting the Milwaukee Bucks. Bucks are 1-point favorites in Toronto. It's a massive pace-up spot for the Raptors. They gained 5 additional possessions over their average. Milwaukee, the fastest team in the league. Siakam, Lowry, Van Vliet, Ibaka, all 16% or higher on FanDuel, with Van Vliet coming in at the tops of 29%. I have him as my number 2 guard as of right now, 6,300. On DK, Van Vliet and Ibaka both in the 20s, Siakam at 13, Lowry only at 6, but he is 8,100. 1.35x multiplier on Siakam on SuperDraft is probably my favorite coming from Toronto. What stands out most to you from the Raptors for today? Tough matchup against Milwaukee.
Yeah, but I think the DK pricing is actually pretty soft on them. Whereas they were priced up on the Indiana guys, it seems like you're getting a discount because Milwaukee's such an efficient defensive team, but you're ignoring that they're the fastest team in the league by a wide margin. So you're getting more possessions, you're getting more opportunities. That the starters for Toronto play massive minutes, and this game only has a 1-point spread. It's between 2 of the best teams in the East. It should be a competitive game. Milwaukee on a back-to-back as well. So I think that even though it's obviously scary taking guys against the Bucks, I think that there is pretty significant upside for the main 4 guys from Toronto: Lowry, Van Vliet, Ibaka, Siakam. Ibaka's salary not really moving. He's averaged about 33 minutes per game in games that Gasol hasn't played this year. He's about 1.12 DraftKings points per minute. Pascal Siakam is obviously just a very, very good player. And then Lowry and Van Vliet, they do cut into each other's production a bit. Siakam also cuts into Lowry's production, but they just play so many minutes. In competitive games, you're expecting 37, 38 minutes from these guys. So I think that Ibaka looks like the best DraftKings play from Toronto for me at 6,500. Yeah. Then I think I would say Siakam at 85, followed by Van Vliet at 68 and Lowry at 81. But they all look like slightly above average to just straight up above average plays to me.
I'd be flip-flopping Siakam and Van Vliet, but other than that, I'm with you, and I don't think that either one of us are going to be quibbling too much about that.
No.
On FanDuel, it's really hard to not like the $6,300 tag on Van Vliet. The ownership is already there. Siakam, probably my second favorite guy on FanDuel. Lowry really close, though, at 7,600. That's a price that I feel is a little bit better. I don't mind getting to OG either on FanDuel, 4,400. Not the best spot in the world, but he's going to be out there. This is the game tailor-made for the Siakam, Lowry, Van Vliet, Ibaka, OG, and Anunoby guys getting like 35, 36 minutes across the board.
Yep.
Let's go to the Milwaukee side. 11-6 on FanDuel, 11-6 on DK. No multiplier on SuperDraft. $56 on Yahoo. I've got him in for 32 minutes, but if he's ever going to play more, this would be the spot, and he's certainly coming in rested. I like Giannis quite a bit here. Made my contenders. No doubt about it, my favorite small forward on FanDuel. You willing to pay up on DraftKings?
Yeah, I'll probably end up giving him an extra minute or two off of that 32 as well. Just because of, kind of what we talked about at the top of the show, where other than the last 2 games, like yesterday, obviously you can just throw it out. He fouled out after 25 minutes. There's nothing you can do there. Yeah. The game before that, he played 29 minutes in a blowout. In 8 games prior to that, he played at least 31 minutes in all of them, including the against Detroit, the first game out of the break, he came back in up by like 20 points in the fourth quarter and played a bunch more minutes. I think he at one point was still on the floor up by like 28 or something. Like they're just very clearly treating him differently in game. You're not really seeing Budenholzer limit the minutes like he was earlier in the season, when it looked like early in the season you'd get these games where they start to get out of hand and Giannis is just sitting on the bench like, oh, maybe we just don't have to play Giannis today. And you're not really seeing that anymore. So I think that his baseline projection is a little bit higher for me now. And then the fact that this should be a competitive game, I'm willing to give him, 33, 34 minutes here. And obviously just the best fantasy producer in the league. It's not a great matchup as far as Toronto goes, but there's only so much you can do when you're talking about someone that has a usage rate, approaching 40%, leads the team in rebounding, leads the team in assists. Just not a whole lot you can do to stop his production.
Yep, I'm going to be getting to him. I have no issue with it whatsoever. Middleton and Bledsoe both basically 17, 18% on FanDuel. Same sort of love for Middleton on DK. Bledsoe not getting any at 6,900. I'm not super interested in either one of those guys on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, I think Bledsoe for 5,800 is like a worthwhile mid-tier guy, depending, like, works whether you want to go stars and scrubs or sort of a balanced build just because of that price range. Could be a day where he picks up an extra minute or two, but who knows? Do you want anything else from Milwaukee? And I guess we need to talk at least a little bit whether or not you think Brook Lopez plays today.
Yeah, so I agree with you on Bledsoe on FanDuel. It's, for one point, the point guard pricing doesn't seem too egregiously bad over there. So Bledsoe looks like, not a top value, but a top, 5 to 8 guy. And it's, we talked about it with Milwaukee. The Giannis eats up so much production that when he's in, it obviously has a drastic impact on guys like Middleton and Bledsoe. But the flip side is that there's really only 3 guys for Milwaukee that produce. Wes Matthews is just a dude standing around. Brook Lopez, when he plays, obviously has some value offensively, but it's basically a very concentrated group of guys that produce for the Bucks. And normally Giannis is the main guy, but in the games that he's not, that it's going to Middleton and Bledsoe. So whenever you get a cheap price tag on one of those guys, even if their median projection isn't great because Giannis is in, their ceiling is still high because it just takes Giannis foul trouble or just Toronto throwing 3 guys at Giannis or something like that to open the door for the next guy up, which is Bledsoe or Middleton. So Bledsoe's price tag on FanDuel looks nice. On DraftKings, I still think him and Middleton are more expensive than I would like. Their salaries are slowly coming down, but they're still elevated because of Giannis being out prior to the All-Star break. So I don't really have much interest in them on DraftKings.
Okay. For right now, I projected Brook Lopez out. I gave Robin Lopez a very minimal 24 minutes, which makes him a fantastic value at 3,200 on DK. He got 30 plus minutes last night. Even 26, 27 in regulation. Are you okay with Robin Lopez if Brook is out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how necessary he'll be because I think he's a really good point per dollar value. I don't know how high his ceiling actually is when you're talking about playing alongside Giannis, Middleton, and Bledsoe. But I agree with you on the minutes. In the 2 games he started earlier this year, he played 23 and 24 minutes and lost fourth quarter run to a blowout. Yesterday, he played about 26, 27 minutes in regulation. So I agree with you that he should probably be projected around, in the mid-20s in minutes. And at that really cheap price tag, it's going to make him a good point per dollar option.
Yeah. There's not a ton of value out there right now, so he's showing up as pretty valuable to me for right now. I would expect that to fade a little bit as we get a little bit of news, or fade completely if we find out that his brother is playing. But did need to point him out at least a little bit.
Yeah. Also, 3K. George Hill's only 3K. He closed alongside Bledsoe last night.
9%
for whatever that's worth
right now.
What'd you say?
He's projected for 9% ownership, but I'm with you. He ranks 41st for me on DK.
Yeah. I mean, he still only played about 20 minutes in regulation. Yeah. Bledsoe played 33. Hill played like 20 in regulation. Bledsoe played like 29 in regulation and Hill played around 20. So only a couple minutes alongside each other, basically, when they closed. But, at 3K, if you're throwing darts, I think that he at least doesn't take up a center spot like Lopez does.
Favorite play in this game?
Giannis.
Favorite play in this game that isn't Giannis?
Ibaka.
Okay. Chicago Bulls, Oklahoma City Thunder. Bulls are 6.5-point underdogs at home. Third lowest implied total on the slate. Possible that Wendell Carter is back for today. I did not project him in. They are running a 9-man rotation. 8,900 on both FanDuel and DK for Zach LaVine, but 1.3x multiplier gets him to 61 SuperDraft points for me. That is a pretty high rank. Only Kobe White on FanDuel is in double digits, which is at 11%. I'm not super excited about any part of the Bulls here. You're looking at like, do you think Daniel Gafford gets enough minutes at 3,600 on DK type stuff? LaVine would be the guy that I'm looking at most if I'm looking at anybody, particularly on FanDuel at the $8,900 price tag, but he's still just my 5th shooting guard. Am I missing anything? Do you have anybody that you're looking at from the Bulls?
No, I mean, looking at DraftKings pricing, they got everyone priced up pretty well. LaVine, I think there's still some meat on the bone at 8,900, but there's always a ton of high upside options in that range. So saying, Zach LaVine can go score 60 fantasy points applies to him, but also is going to apply to a lot of people that you're comparing him to. Yeah. So, a secondary guy there where anytime Zach LaVine is low owned in tournaments, I'm interested just because he's the entire offense. But when you look to these other guys that we've been able to go to due to the injuries, not only does Wendell Carter have an impact there if he comes back, but even ignoring him, Satoransky now up to 5,700. Yeah. It's pretty thin. It's a pretty thin value. Same goes for Kobe White at 56. Obviously, talking about Kobe White, he obviously still has a really high ceiling at that salary if you're going to get 30 plus minutes from him. He has back-to-back games with 33 actual points. The problem is that he's just not a high peripheral guy. So you're talking about a scoring dependent player who is now getting priced up. And the general rule of thumb with scoring dependent players like that, just like with basically with volatile players and their ownership, when they're cheap, you're willing to take shots at them having a good shooting game. When they're priced to have those good shooting games, you just back off really, really quickly.
Yeah, it's just it's an ugly spot here for the Bulls, clear across the board. Pricing's not great. And Oklahoma City, solid. It's not like the Bulls are picking up any extra possessions here. Oklahoma City, 4% better than average on a per possession basis defensively. I'm more likely to get to OKC in particular. We've got Chris Paul, SGA, Adams, and Gallo all in double digits on FanDuel. Only Gallo and DK, but he is 20% owned on both sites. Definitely my favorite guy from the Thunder across both sites. I mean, I always get like a little bit of Nerlens Noel projected as decent on DK, 3,300. How are you handling the Thunder? What stands out most to you?
Gallo's price is just too cheap. In competitive games, you're typically getting 31, 32 minutes from him. The counter argument to Gallo, obviously, is that he's not all that volatile of a player. His floor is high. His ceiling isn't that high. So he's not the scariest guy to fade if like you need to find somewhere to pivot in a lineup. But just talking values, I think he looks, really good. If you're expecting 31 to 32 minutes from him at only 6,100 on DraftKings. Everyone else looks reasonable. I would say secondary options for me. Nobody that stands out, nobody that looks, really bad. I think that Paul's getting a little expensive at 8K, but SGA at 7,300, Steven Adams at 6,700, especially if Wendell Carter is still out. Adams should not have any trouble getting boards against whatever garbage Chicago is running out at the 5 if Carter doesn't play. And you have seen Adams' minutes trend up. You mentioned Noel at 3,300. That's something that Alex and I had talked about on the show on Friday, where Steven Adams actually ended up being a tournament-winning play. But the thing that makes Noel an appealing tournament option when he's this cheap is that he's greater than a 1 fantasy point per minute player. His normal playing time is going to be around 17 or 18 minutes, basically, taking whatever of 48 Adams doesn't play. But he's basically foul trouble, an injury, just a weird game flow from getting a lot more minutes really easily. So the volatility in his minutes is there, and he plays productive minutes. So that's always something that is appealing in large field tournaments at low ownership.
We are on the same page. I like Chris Paul a little bit on FanDuel, 7,400, much more manageable. He's probably my favorite Thunder player, at least as of right now, just given that price tag. But I'll be working my way through Paul, SGA, Gallo, Adams Probably not Schroeder on FanDuel. 5,600 is a little bit more than I would like. I think there's enough value at the guard position to get to something better. But for right now, I've got my eye on Chris Paul. DraftKings price, I'm not interested. To Denver we go. Denver Nuggets, Detroit Pistons, 114 implied total for the Nugs, 102 for the Pistons, 12-point favorites at home. Nikola Jokic gets a date with Christian Wood. That should be fun. 10-6 on FanDuel, 10K on DraftKings, $49 on Yahoo. I love that 10-6 price tag on FanDuel. I don't mind 10K on DK either. He's owned in the teens. Jamal Murray picking up a little love on FanDuel. Barton and Millsap picking up a little love on DraftKings. I'm relatively indifferent for both of those guys, but this just looks like an incredible spot for Nikola Jokic. There's not anything resembling someone that can stop him on the Pistons.
Yeah, the only two negative things I'll point out about Jokic, and neither one has to do with him really. But Detroit has been the second slowest team in the league over the last, since the start of January. Faster only than Charlotte. And then Plumlee being back does put Jokic's minutes projection in that like 32 to 34 minute range as opposed to 36 to 38 that you were getting when Plumlee was out. That being said, a front court that consists of Thon Maker, Christian Wood, Sekou Doumbouya, not one that I'm shying away from with Jokic. Obviously, he does everything, leads the team in usage, leads the team in assist percentage, leads the team in rebounding percentage, and should still play 32 to 34 minutes. So I do think Jokic still looks really, really good. There are just a couple of, circumstances that are out of his control that keep him from being like a top play for me.
Makes sense. Yeah, he doesn't grade out as well on DK. Like I've got him as basically 3 points better on FanDuel than on DraftKings relative to the salary structure. Doesn't mean I don't want him because that would be silly. But, of the 10K guys, it's probably last for me.
Right now I have him on DraftKings, that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Not that that's like an indictment or anything. Just
no, not at all. It's definitely a spot where if ownership, as we get closer to lock, if ownership is just like drastically favoring the other three, while I do think that all three of them look better than Jokic does, ceiling wise, Jokic can still just go absolutely nuts.
Yep.
It should be a good display of. There's been a lot of on like DFS Twitter. There's been a lot of like, how do coaches not like Christian Wood? Like he's so good. Blah, blah. This should be a good display of why Christian Wood has trouble playing for actual NBA teams that are not the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, it's really annoying to read that stuff.
So it doesn't annoy me much because I admittedly am very much in the camp where I view everything through DFS and pay very little attention to actual basketball value.
Yeah.
I just happen to know Christian Wood sucks defensively, and that's why he has always been a very productive offensive player that can't keep a job.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, he look, there's a reason that he ended up on the Pistons and was not playing even as
and barely made the Pistons.
Right. I mean, that was down to the final cut. They cut Jamal Crawford, maybe, I think, and kept him instead. That said, very talented offensively, but craziness. And 7,300 on FanDuel, 7,300 on DraftKings, 1.55x multiplier, $29 on Yahoo. I like Christian Wood today against the Nuggets.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to mention is just that if you rewind the video and hear what I said about Nerlens Noel, you can say the exact same thing about Mason Plumlee at 3,200.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as Christian Wood goes, assuming he comes off the bench again, probably plays around 30 minutes, around a 1.15 to 1.2 DraftKings point per minute guy. He looks okay at 7,300. Nothing I'm super excited about. Nothing that I'm, running the other direction from.
Shout out to chat. Yeah, it wasn't Jamal Crawford. It was Joe Johnson.
Right.
In my head, the same scenario, but appreciate you guys correcting me there. Yeah, I'm going to get to Wood. Derrick Rose, 4,900 on FanDuel. The minutes are super weird right now, and he's been bad as of late, but I'm going to get $4,900 Derrick Rose. The problem is, so is the public. 27% ownership right now projected. Only 17 on DK at 5,600. How do you feel about Rose?
Hard not to like him at that price point. There's obviously there are some concerns about his minutes just because There's no real reason for Detroit to be running him into the ground. He played 28 minutes against the Blazers in their last game. There's certainly some blowout risk here going into Denver as 12-point underdogs, second lowest total on the slate for Detroit. All those things, suck for Rose, but he's also pretty cheap. And without Griffin, without Kennard, without Drummond, without Reggie Jackson, tons of assist opportunities, tons of usage for him. Christian Wood coming off the bench, we assume, means even more usage for Rose during the minutes that Don McCurr and Sekou Doumbouya are in the front court. So, yeah, I mean, at that price, there is still a lot more upside than downside.
Anybody else here? Svi 3,100 getting 14% ownership. Sekou getting 12 at 3,200. I greatly prefer Svi in this scenario. I don't really want either guy though.
Yeah, I mean, Sekou at 3,200 is another one that I think looks like an okay point per dollar value. I just don't think he puts up a score all that often that you actually have to have in tournaments. And I think that, we talk about minimum salary guys not killing your lineups, and that's true, but it is still a position, it's still a roster spot. It does have opportunity cost. So I don't really love either of them. I think I would give the slight edge to Sekou, but feel pretty similarly about them.
We're on the same page.
It is worth noting that Svi only played 15 minutes last game. Wasn't in foul trouble. Just played a stint to open the first and the third.
Yeah. Was looking at, I didn't expect Brandon Knight to play 20 minutes. I didn't expect John Henson to play 23. Thon only played 16. I don't know what they're going to be doing moving forward.
I don't either. And it's kind of what I was alluding to with Derrick Rose, but even more so, it goes to these peripheral guys. This is the problem you start running into this time of year in NBA. Obviously we've joked with this NBA season, there's been a ton of just random stuff that's happened anyway. But this time of year, you start getting into these teams clearly are not in the playoff picture. They do not care about winning games. They're going to do whatever they want to do rotation-wise on any given night. So you do have to be aware that there's just more volatility in stuff like this. I think that the way that maybe you can combat that as far as DFS strategy goes is maybe paying a little bit more attention to ownership than you normally would in NBA, since earlier in the year it is more projectable. It starts to get a little bit less so now. But on especially bad teams like this, you just kind of have to understand that what happened yesterday or last game doesn't necessarily have an indication on what happens in the next game.
Bingo. Favorite play in this game that isn't Nikola Jokic?
Derrick Rose.
I agree.
If you asked me another one, I would start running out of names pretty quickly.
Yes, I would as well. Perfect opportunity for you guys to hit the like button. 600 people and only 66 likes. Not going to cut it, my friends. Let's get that number north of 100. We would greatly appreciate it. NBA ownership rankings are free today. Ben Ross's Above the Cut PGA article, free today. NHL lineup builder, free today.
Shout out to @Bleach on Twitter, pointing out to us that it is Fred VanVleet's birthday today, which makes him go from a good play to exactly the same as he was anyway.
Yeah, and probably means that EMAC is toweling himself off right now.
EMAC has already tweeted about the Fred VanVleet birthday contest.
Amazing. 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Ben Ross and Tim Frank will be talking some PGA DFS strategy. We'll get the Jake Hari NHL strategy show at 4. Alex Baker will be behind the paywall for his game plan stream at 4 as well. 5 p.m. Deeper Dive. Adam will be back with Laffy. And 6 p.m. live before lock. Bring your birthday hats. Fast Eddie Fear. EMAC. Taking you all the way up till 7:30 for SuperDraft lock. EMAC's going to be on one for the Fred VanVleet birthday extravaganza. Oh boy, we're going to hear a lot about that birthday narrative today, aren't
we? You might if you're producing.
Touche. 3 to go. Easy slate to work through. But now we're getting into the games with lots of people that look usable. Los Angeles Lakers, New Orleans Pelicans. 8-point favorites for the Lakers at home. Massive pace-up spot for LA. They gained 5 possessions over their average. But for the most part, this is just the same as it usually is for me. It's lots of Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I prefer Anthony Davis to LeBron James pretty much across the board, including SuperDraft, where he does get the 1.05 multiplier. LeBron just at the flat 1. I love AD in this spot today. Probably my favorite overall play of the day. Was number 1 in contenders. 30% owned on FanDuel, which is essentially the same as LeBron. 16 on DK, slightly behind LeBron. How are you breaking up the two studs here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're really comparable. Normally, I prefer LeBron because he's the better per minute guy to Davis. In this particular matchup, though, I think it's a lot closer just because there's no real post answer for the Pels. We've seen, obviously they actually talked about it too. The first time these two teams played, they were basically force feeding Davis just because of who they were playing. But the next time they played, they said that they weren't, force feeding him because of the narrative or whatever. It was just that there's no answer for him. Yeah. And, so that obviously, I don't expect Zion to do a whole lot to change Anthony Davis's effectiveness here. So I do think it's a great spot for Davis. I think it's a really good spot for LeBron too. But I do give a slight edge to Davis, especially where he's a little bit less expensive.
Yeah, he's been playing really well. 1.58 FanDuel points per minute over his last 30 days. Quite a bit ahead of LeBron at 1.40. That doesn't mean I don't like LeBron. I'm going to have both of these guys, but AD will be my priority. I won't have another Laker on FanDuel, barring any news, but on DraftKings, any interest in like the also-rans of this team? Rondo, JaVale, KCP, Danny Green. KCP and Danny Green both garnering a little bit of ownership. Avery Bradley, Caruso. Where's your head at?
It's one of those teams where in large field tournaments, I think maybe there's some merit to rotating these guys through. But if you're playing, limited lineups or looking at cash lineups, there's no real reason to be looking to them. They're also not quite as cheap as I would like, talking about like a Kyle Kuzma or Rondo or Dwight Howard. You potentially have Markieff Morris playing today as well, which just is another body that can mess up what's already a really crowded rotation behind LeBron and Davis. So
what an unnecessary addition to a team.
I mean, whatever. But I think that from the secondary guys, it is worth pointing out Danny Green. He's 3,300. Yeah. He's in a pace up spot. He's going to knock down threes, and if the game's competitive, maybe he gets a couple extra minutes. So I do think that Green actually stands out as a reasonable third option behind James and Davis.
I actually prefer KCP to Green, but we're talking about essentially the same exact thing. So
yeah, same play, different players.
Yeah, same ownership right now to 12% to 11%. Like ultimately, having a little bit of one of those guys is probably an okay idea given the pace of this game. But you're never going to feel excited to have either one until you see their score afterwards.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely one of those where like you're like going through your lineup, like, oh, I have a bunch of PMR left, and then it's like, oh, it's Danny Green.
Yeah.
And then 30 minutes later, you're like, oh, Danny Green has 20 points in the first half.
It's like, oh, I've got 96 player minutes remaining. Oh, it's Josh Hart and Danny Green.
Right.
Shit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like texting your friends like, I'm in fourth, and nobody ahead of me has minutes. I'm only 18 points back, and I have Danny Green, so I'm probably gonna end up in fourth.
Yeah. We might push.
Right.
On the Pelican side, not a lot of love coming in here. Obviously a very difficult spot, but 115.25 implied total still works. Zion and Lonzo are both at 12% on FanDuel. Brandon Ingram is at 21 on DraftKings, where he's $6,800, $700 cheaper than he is on FanDuel. I like Ingram a little bit on DK. I'm a little bit less excited since all of the ownership is already there. I don't really like anyone on FanDuel. Derek Favors at center, I have ranked 7th. Like, that is for his position. That is the highest rank of anyone I have on the Pelicans on FanDuel. I don't think that I'm going to get there. I feel like you're going to tell me you're going to play a lot of Zion, but hit me with your Pelicans thoughts.
I like Zion on FanDuel at 7,500.
Sure.
Right now, I have him as the 4th power forward.
Okay.
And that's 10th. Just in baseline stuff. So I'm not going to defend it too hard. But yeah, no, I mean, I think 8K on DraftKings, it's okay. But the one guy that does stand out on DraftKings to me is Ingram at 6,800. I agree with you that the field being there makes him a little bit less appealing, just because it is a tough matchup against the Lakers. But assuming that the Pels hang in this game, which teams tend to do because the Lakers' second unit is just so freaking bad, assuming Ingram plays 33, 34 minutes, he should be the second highest usage guy behind Zion. He should be able to exceed a $6,800 price tag.
I expected to get to more Pelicans here, and it's just not. There's no volume to be found. I like Zion. Obviously, I like Zion on SuperDraft. Still gets the 1.55x multiplier. Can't really avoid that. I just think these guys are all like a couple $100 overpriced. And,
Yeah, I agree, except for Ingram.
right, and like that just becomes a neutral play if he's already at 20%. It's about where I think that he should be either way. Shout out to Conscious Machine for apparently making the best oatmeal. I haven't had oatmeal in a while.
No, neither have I.
Used to eat a lot as a kid.
Same.
Brown sugar, cinnamon, maple, apple, maple, something maybe. Brown sugar, cinnamon for sure. I would eat a lot of packs at a time. Back when, like, you know, you had metabolism and I could eat an entire box of oatmeal and then go out and run around for 10 hours. I would eat that entire box of oatmeal now and be like, I wonder what's on Netflix.
Right, exactly.
Not good. Not good. That's what happens when you're lazy. Favorite play in this game?
Davis.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Now we have a lot of people to talk about. Portland Trailblazers, Boston Celtics. Celtics 5-point favorites in Portland. Still no Dame. Still no Kemba Walker. We'll start on the Portland side. Relatively neutral pace matchup, but Celtics defense good. Portland defense bad. Whiteside, double digits in ownership. 23% on FanDuel. 11 on DK. CJ McCollum finally priced up on FanDuel, but still just 8,500. 9K on DK. 1.5x multiplier on SuperDraft, so they did not move that bad boy at all. He is without question the number one SuperDraft play for today. I like Gary Trent on Yahoo at the flat min. I don't even mind him for 4,500 on DraftKings. Nobody getting any crazy ownership, though, on DK. Whiteside, Melo, and Trent all in the 11 to 15% range. How do you want to handle Portland here? Tough defensive spot. Prices are starting to creep up with Dame out. Do you still get the CJ?
Yeah, I think that if he's right now, we have him at 6% ownership on DraftKings. That is really, really low to me. Yeah, Boston is a solid team defensively, but still a reasonable 111 team total for Portland. And you're just going to get huge minutes and a lot of offensive opportunities for McCollum. He's averaged 1.55 DraftKings points per minute in 4 games without Lillard this year. Going back to the start of the 2017-2018 season, you get 14 games without Damian Lillard. Obviously, slightly different teams, but more or less, as far as we're concerned for DFS, similar opportunities. 1.27 DraftKings points per minute, 33% usage, 30.5% assist percentage for McCollum. Should play 38 plus minutes, assuming that this game's competitive. I think that 9K maybe is a little bit more like sticker shock if you're just looking at it than it really should be.
Yeah. I probably need to give him more minutes. I have him in at 37 right now. I think that I could safely give him 38. Like he's just going to be out there if this game is at all competitive. I don't think that I'd have a ton on DraftKings. I'd like to get a little bit north of that 6% number, but 12% on FanDuel is what really stands out to me. I think 8,500 is a bargain. I'm happy to get to him there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the minutes go, he played 43.2 minutes against Detroit on Sunday.
Unbelievable.
He did not sit in the second half.
Unbelievable. Well, ultimately, feel free to play some CJ because he's going to dominate the ball. I don't want to get to Gary Trent, but I will. I don't want to get to Trevor Ariza, but I will. 23% owned Whiteside on FanDuel. I have him as my number 2 center. How does that feel to you? Like, I mean, I think it comes this easy. We have Whiteside at 22% ownership. He's $1,000 cheaper than Jokic, who's at 15% ownership. I'd just rather have Jokic.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like optimization, it's Whiteside. But when you start factoring in ownership, I think Jokic is a good pivot. The thing with Whiteside is that he's a really good play because of the minutes he plays, and he's around a 1.3 DraftKings point per minute player. The issue is that he doesn't really get a bump with Lillard out. Right. They're not going to run the offense through Whiteside because Lillard's not out there. Yeah. He's not going to start getting a bunch more assists because Lillard's not out there, and Lillard doesn't have a big impact on the rebounding. So there's nothing really that changes for Whiteside, except for his price goes up a little bit because the sites just kind of price up the entire team, and the ownership goes up a little bit because everyone just says, "Oh, Lillard's out, Portland benefits," and plays everyone. So nothing really changes for Whiteside except for like the outside factors, which makes him a little bit less appealing in my opinion.
I'll be paying very close attention to that ownership. I'm surprised that he's not getting any more love for 9,200 on DraftKings since he's $400 cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that on DraftKings I have him as a good play, but I think that there's still better center options.
Would you rather have him or Sabonis?
Whiteside.
Okay.
Just mostly because of the pace.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Boston. Tatum, Hayward, Brown, Smart, Tice, all in double digits in ownership on both FanDuel and DraftKings. I fully agree with it. On FanDuel, I would say I'm going Tatum, Smart, Hayward, Brown, Tice. On DraftKings, it's probably Tice, Brown, Tatum, Smart, Hayward. But ultimately, it comes down to this. I can't imagine not having heavy exposure to a rotated cast of characters from the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. The pricing's gotten to where they're expensive enough where if you roster like the wrong one, it's definitely going to hurt you. It's not like it's free plays like it was a couple games ago, but the prices aren't high enough where when you're on the right ones, they're still just going to smash those price points. So, I think that there's more risk at least in going to the Boston guys individually, but as a team, you still know where the production's coming from. It's a good matchup against a weak Portland defense that plays at a reasonably fast pace. So as a team, rotating through these guys is very clearly where you want to be.
Yeah, it's really hard to prioritize anybody. Just like they're all sort of just exactly what you want. I have all 5 starters in my top 15 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that Brad Wanamaker is worth like a flyer at 3,400. Not somebody that I really want to get a lot of, but I can't imagine.
Not sure I'm with you on that one, but
I'm not saying that I'm going to have 25% Brad Wanamaker, but if I had 5,
I also thought you said 4,400. Sorry,
no, 3,400.
34. Yeah, okay. Now I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I didn't even think that I needed to justify it. That was weird. So knowing that you heard a different price is helpful.
I had popcorn machine in front of me and not the pricing, and I heard 4,400, and I was just like, no, good.
I don't want Brad Wanamaker at 4,400 unless they tell me that he has to play 36 minutes to live. 1.25x multiplier for Jason Tatum is probably the best option on SuperDraft. I don't know if you said anything here, so my apologies. My wife had texted me. Any rules for Boston for Fantasy Cruncher?
Not really. Probably would set like maybe one of Wanamaker and Smart. Obviously one of Tice and Cantor, but I'm not sure that people actually Cantor's 3,300. So I guess it's worth mentioning just because he only played
6 minutes or something stupid.
Five minutes against the Lakers. His minutes have been all over the place, but he's certainly the kind of guy where if he gets more minutes, you would actually want him at 3,300. But I would set one of Tice and Cantor because the easiest way for Cantor obviously to get more minutes is Tice to be in foul trouble or something like that. So I would set that one. I probably would do like one of Smart and Wanamaker. But no, it's mostly, I think the main rule that I would have is just however many players from a team I decide to cap it at.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. We're on the same page. Favorite play in this game?
CJ
over everybody from Boston, huh? This is just kind of like you can't just pick one Boston guy, so it's got to be CJ. They're chopping the vote as like an MVP vote for 2 guys.
If I can take, because I play 150 lineups, if I can say I'll take Boston as a team, I would take them over CJ. But if I just have to, in one lineup, say, life or death, what player from this game am I playing? It's CJ.
Yeah. You're putting CJ into the lineup. You're ending up with somebody from Boston, but it doesn't matter who it is.
Right. I'm ending up with probably 2 guys from Boston, and it's whatever 2 fit the rest of the lineup.
Right. All right. We've got one final game to go, but I do want to hit on one thing, and I hope it's still our pin tweet because it would make things a lot easier. And it is. So here's what I need you guys to do. It's going to be easier. I've got it up on the screen right now. You can win a free month of Awesomeo Plus Platinum. You just have to reply to the comment section of any show for our podcast feed. We have a link that links to every single podcast you can get for us on all of the different platforms, iTunes, Spotify. I'm probably missing a couple. You can click the link in the pinned tweet at Awesomeo_com's Twitter account. You have the chance to win that free month. Just make sure that when you leave that comment, you leave your Awesomeo username, and we will be doing a giveaway. One random winner will be selected to win. But trying to funnel people over to that podcast feed. We post all of our strategy shows to that feed every single day, updated straight to your phone. So if you're looking to get our shows in a different way other than just the YouTube streams or Periscope or Twitch, you can check out our podcast feeds. Just check out the pin tweet. You can get all of the information there. Golden State Warriors, Sacramento Kings. Kings are 5.5-point favorites at Golden State. I've got Draymond in. I've got Marquise Chris in. How are you handling both of those guys right now?
I have both of them out right now.
Perfect. So, with that in mind, how do you feel about Golden State here? Going to be a lot of minutes to go around in your example.
Yeah, a lot of minutes to go around, a lot of unproductive guys to take them. Yeah. But no, I mean, I think that if they're both out, you would expect, at least 31, 32 minutes from Eric Paschall, who on FanDuel's cheap. On DraftKings, he's 5K, which would be fine as well. You had in their last game against the Pels, you had Dragan Bender play 20 minutes. That's still probably not enough to really make him appealing. Kai Bowman played 32 minutes off the bench. You once again got a lot of Jordan Poole, Lee, and Wiggins. So I think that, if they're out, the main guys that get a bump in terms of minutes are Paschall and Bowman, because Bowman would lose some playing time as well. I think that Lee, Poole, and Wiggins minutes should be pretty solid regardless.
So I have Draymond and Marquise Chris in. I'm interested mildly in both of those guys if they play, particularly in Chris. 5,800 on FanDuel works for me. I don't mind getting to Draymond. He's been playing a little bit better as of late. 5,800 on FanDuel, 5,900 on DK. He's probably my favorite play from Golden State, just from an overall perspective. Positionally, not so sure it's going to work as well, though. I don't get the sense I'm going to end up with Andrew Wiggins or really anybody from Golden State unless we see Chris out or Chris and Draymond out. Do you think Dragan Bender plays if either of those guys are back?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, not enough to matter.
Okay. I don't have much else to talk about from Golden State. That news is important, and this team is just a dumpster fire of trying to figure out what's going on. We probably won't know any of that information at all.
Yeah, I mean, if they're both out, you could get another 28 minutes from Toscano Anderson too.
Yes. Sacramento side, though, 7,800 on FanDuel, 7,600 on DraftKings. 1.4x multiplier on SuperDraft, $34 on Yahoo. Excellent spot for Sacramento. Golden State, real bad defensively. I really like De'Aaron Fox here. I've been liking him a lot lately, and that hasn't paid off. How do you feel about Fox?
I love him. I think the salary just is too low for his upside. In competitive games, you should get big minutes out of him, somewhere in the 33, 34-minute range. He gets a little bit more usage with Bogdanovich in the starting lineup and Hield on the bench or coming off the bench. But, either way, I think it's just, his games maybe haven't been great recently, but you can't really let that weigh down how you're projecting him.
He was my number 2 contender today behind Anthony Davis, 30% owned on FanDuel and DraftKings, but I think that is very, very reasonable. Now, I will say that it's probably easy to individually pivot off of him in a single lineup. But I think he grades out in a fantastic manner for today. Also picking up some love, Harry Giles on FanDuel is 4K. He's 4,400 on DraftKings. $11 on Yahoo. What do you make of the slight minutes boost for him over the past 2 games?
He's, I think, been playing well. Has had a lot to do with it. Luke Walton complimented him after the last game, said that he thought it was the best he'd seen him play, which probably means that Luke Walton will DNP him today, but just because that's how Luke Walton works. But, I think that the concern is that Alex Len is back now, and it's just one more guy for Walton to use in that center rotation. But he's playing well. He played 32 minutes last game. I'm not going to project 32 minutes, but even if I go to, something like 26, he looks like a pretty reasonable value.
Yeah, I gave him 23. I think that I'd be still happy to get to him a little bit there, leave a little bit of upside potentially. I don't want to get too much though. He's already at 24% ownership on FanDuel and 17 on DraftKings, so I feel like I'll be able to find a different $4,400 guy to not like hold hands with the field.
I mean, and also, you talk about the ownership there. Alex Len is 3,700 with no ownership.
Yep.
And he played 16 minutes last game. There's no real reason to think he plays significantly more, but it's certainly a possibility that he does. And he's just like, he negatively correlates, obviously, with Giles. So if you are playing like, one lineup and that's a stand that you want to take, Len makes sense from a game theory perspective as a pivot.
There's no reason that Alex Len doesn't become their starter.
No.
I mean, ignoring like Rashawn Holmes coming back, but they have no tie to Harry Giles. They did not pick up his option for next season. He and Alex Len are basically the same people, and I mean, you can flip a coin as to who you think is actually the better center, but there's no reason that Alex Len can't suddenly just play 24 minutes and Harry Giles plays 12.
Exactly. This is just one of those situations.
Now, though, but in the future,
it's one of those situations where obviously you have to settle on like a medium projection and how you want to project the game to go. But you have to understand that you just don't really know how this plays out, because it probably to a large extent has to do with A, how Giles is playing or how the game is going, and B, basically what the Kings coaching staff wants to do, which obviously we're not privy to. So there's a very wide range of outcomes as far as how playing time shakes out between these two going forward. And whenever you have a slate where there's basically two players playing X amount of minutes and the whole field says, oh, well, player A is going to get the bulk of those minutes. But the reality is that we have a lean towards player A, but we don't really know how it's going to shake out. There's always merit in large field tournaments to just taking player B and hoping that you're on the right side of variance, basically.
Anybody else from the Kings?
I think that Hield is okay. I think that Bielitsa is okay, but it's really Fox as the priority, and then Giles and or Len as the second guy.
7 games up, 7 games down. Let's sum it up. Give me your favorite plays on DraftKings for tonight.
Giannis, McCollum, Fox, Davis, Ibaka, Gallinari, anyone from Boston, or anyone that starts on Boston, Ingram.
Done?
Yep.
Cool. Point guard on FanDuel, give me De'Aaron Fox, Chris Paul, Derrick Rose at 4,900. At shooting guard, give me some Marcus Smart, Zach LaVine, Fred VanVleet, Oladipo at 4,800. Small forward, Giannis and LeBron, Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown. Going to be hard for me to not have a lot of those 4 guys, but Siakam still looks good. Gallinari still looks good. OG if you need to save some money for 4,400. Power forward, Anthony Davis at the top. Jason Tatum, pretty significant step behind. Still like him though. We've got Christian Wood, Daniel Tice, Harry Giles at 4K. And then at center, it's going to be Jokic at the top for me. Keep an eye on Whiteside's ownership. If Marquise Chris plays, I think he's very much viable at 5,800. Good slate. Cool. I'm excited to see where it ends up.
Yeah. Good. Some pretty interesting tournament options or contests today too.
Ooh, I didn't look at anything in particular.
Just different, at least on DraftKings, different pricing or different price points than normal. Okay. They have a $100 buy-in, 100K to first. The Thunderdome is 150K to first with 100 people. Nice. And then they have their normal, $8 100K to first as well.
There you go, guys. Check it all out and check out SuperDraft. Go to superdraft.io and use the promo code Awesomeo for $20 in super cash on your first $100 deposit. Fast Eddie Fear and EMAC will be going the extra half hour. Super Draft locks at 7:30 tonight, so stick around after Live Before Lock to get your Super Draft breakdown. Adam, anything else?
I will be back at 5 with Offie for the deeper dive.
There you go, guys.
Also, office hours tonight at 10 in Premium Slack with me.
There you go. Office hours with Adam at 10 o'clock tonight. Sweat the Late Night Hammer with Adam for an hour. Go check that out. Ask him any question you want, but you got to be a premium sub to do it. We will talk to you guys later. Best of luck tonight.